Welcome into Floyd Street's finest. He is Phil Baker. I'm Jack Grossman. Phil Baker, ESPN Louisville. Always great to have you back, man. How you been? It's been a minute.
It's been great. I feel like I'm on for the political season and election season. So I thank you for coming to your political correspondence. We're not talking sports. We're not talking politics. But glad that is behind us here in the beautiful ESPN Louisville studios. Good to see your wonderful face down in the ATL, which I'm sure was a crazy couple days with election season going on down there.
It's funny. I got so much of because people told me like I needed to vote early and all that stuff, and me being me, like I procrastinated, like I was registered and all that stuff. But I got all these horror stories from like friends and families. I was like, oh, I was in line for 45 minutes, an hour and a half. I was in and out in 5 minutes. The place they got it down here was phenomenal. It was easy. It was incredible.
Yeah, I was the place I went, it wasn't the technology part of it. It was some operator errors. And look, I'm super thankful for the older individuals that do it. Little could have used a little assistance on some of the technology that they had working out there. But nonetheless, all in all, I had in my mind I was going to be there an hour anyways. I was probably there 35 minutes. It wasn't terrible.
That's not bad.
No,
See, I was
not bad at all.
prepared. I had my AirPods. I had a podcast I was going to listen
Same.
to.
I'm listening to
Yeah.
sports talk. I mean, look, that's what we do here in the business. I had it built into my mind. It wasn't going to be too terrible. So yeah, in and out and democracy. Strebel's talking about it. You're probably going to hear him yelling
Oh,
here
of
in his head
course.
right now.
I fully expect to hear Strebel going nuts about it in the background at some point. But the college basketball season has gotten underway. I got a lot of thoughts, Phil. I know you do too, but Louisville absolutely shellacks Morehead State. 93-45 was the score Monday night. Yes, we're going to spend a lot of time previewing Tennessee too, but damn it, I'm going to get my thoughts off on this Morehead State game as well. For comparison, Phil, I tweeted this out at Jack Grossman 97. Shameless plug. You're at Phil __ Baker. You always say you're still working on the double
It's still, I
underscore.
mean, look, with Elon Musk, I get a texter that gets really mad about that. It's like, just fixed it. And I'm like, it's a bit, guys. Yes, I'm keeping the double underscore until the guy who hasn't tweeted since 2009 eventually gives it up. But until then, it's not, hey, there's Nick Valvano. He has no idea that I'm talking to you. But yes, it's still Phil __ Baker.
It's going to be a great blast from the past for me seeing the people that walk around in the background of this. It's going to be hilarious for sure. But yes, that is the big thing. Like Louisville wins that game by 38 points or by 48 points. To compare in the Kenny Payne era, in the first four wins that they had, the only four wins they had in Kenny Payne's tenure that year one for Louisville, the four games were won by a combined 37 points. So I feel like that's all you need to know about kind of the night and day of Pat Kelsey versus KP in this. Like it took one game for them to surpass the win total, but they had four games under Kenny Payne.
Yeah, no, look, I remember we did this podcast back in March when the coaching carousel was trending in that direction and we had the ongoing bits. I know Mark Ennis and I had some fun with it. It's like, this guy, Pat Kelsey, kind of looks like a police sketch, but you don't know anything about him. But what was the one thing we talked about? We didn't want former players. We didn't want donors. We didn't want anyone getting in the mind of Josh Hurt. We wanted this to be his decision. And look, there was going to be some backlash at first, but you know who had to feel really good after the exhibition games and the Morehead State game? Josh Hurt. And it's because it wasn't the sexy or popular pick at the time, but he went with his intuition and said, hey, I'm going to be, I use this a lot, that Andy Dufresne from Shawshank Redemption. I don't know if you understand that movie reference.
I do, actually.
Okay, you've seen Shawshank.
It's
I got to be careful
with
you. If it's not South Park or SpongeBob, I never know with you. I was still shocked to this day that I had to push and scream and urge you to watch Blue Chips, which is just perfectly for you with everything going on. Anyways, one of the things we wanted this to be his decision, not have any outside noise. He had to feel so gratified. I don't know how deep, and we'll talk about the 30,000-foot view of it. And I know we're focusing on Morehead and preview in Tennessee, but it had to feel really good for him to say, you know what, guys, let the adults do the job here. Let them do that here. And then we can have some fun with, the big picture scenario of things, what the ceiling is for this team. And I think that had to be very gratifying for him.
Yeah, I mean, the big picture stuff is as big of a story of this as anything. I mean, the fact that Louisville just went out there and busted a Morehead State team that, yes, they lost Preston Spratlin, and yes, they lost their top 7 scorers, but was an NCAA tournament team last year. It could be a lot worse. I mean, Indiana played a team on Wednesday night that was 40 spots lower.
Yeah.
than Morehead, and Indiana only beat that team by 19 and struggled at fast points. So for Louisville to hit the ground running and just absolutely dismantle and dominate an opponent, yes, that is impressive. And yes, you don't need to put in the qualifiers on this. That wasn't a given the past couple years for this basketball program. And to get to that point and to look so established on what they want to do on both ends of the floor so far is really such a breath of fresh air for the city of Louisville, the basketball program, and fans of the program.
Well, and it just goes to show you. I mean, the trendy names at times. I've been adamant about this. Like at places like the Louisville, and I know we probably took it for granted with with Rick Pitino, but even going back to the Chris Mack stuff, and I know that didn't end perfectly for that, but you have so many resources. Same with Kentucky, same with Indiana. That just it's extremely difficult to fail here with the resources that you have to be a special type of bad in order to have that happen. But I think it goes to show you that when Josh Hurd was adamant about, he wanted somebody who was going to crawl here. And I mean, Pat Kelsey and the staff, they're showing that. And I think you saw, like, I don't think you necessarily needed to have style points to impress a lot of the Louisville fans, but the crowd was engaged from start to finish. And I know you can get into it. Was it the 22,000 that were there? No, it wasn't. However, I think it was pretty impressive from the standpoint of with everything that's transpired over the last 5 to 7 years. It's pretty important to say that core fans that you have there, they were really embracing everything that they were able to do in terms of keep and show the gratitude that they had for this team and whatnot. So yeah, there's Double D right there.
And it's something to where, like, yes, it was, I think 12,900 was the attendance, which, in a nutshell, to whatever. But I mean, the people there, like, I've heard from friends and family that were there that it was very engaging and into it. But you know what leads that? The play on the court being really, really good. That's what will lead to that. It's the fact that you got to have a team that knows what it wants to do and can go out there. And yes, it's just one game. Yes, it was just the exhibitions, but to go out and be able to just manhandle a team and dominate them and be in control and know what you want to do is something that, again, has not been taken for granted here. And I want to get into it a little bit in terms of, look, I mean, they know what their identity is on both ends of the floor, especially offensively. Louisville in that game against Morehead, Phil, averaged 13.1 seconds per offensive possession. That is the third fastest in the country so far to this point. Ironically, the team that's been the fastest is Michigan, another, guy that Louisville kind of won with Dusty May. But you're seeing they're playing with a pace. They're getting the shots that they want. They're getting open threes. They're getting into the lane, and they got to the free throw line against Morehead a lot better than they had in the exhibitions as well. To where I thought they have such an identity on the offensive end. That's something that's going to be something you can watch and see, and that's going to translate in games against Tennessee and the battle for Atlantis against Indiana. They're not figuring out who they are, even with all the new pieces right now. They know what they want to accomplish on both ends of the floor.
No, and I think Ennis put something out there on Twitter that I really enjoyed, and I know our buddy Chris Hadfield does good work out there too in terms of the gambling components and diving into some of the analytics. But Ennis, I think it was on one of the Case and Fryer going out of bounds on the back cut. Even that looked good. Right. Like and that was a turnover there, but it just looked like a cohesive plan. And the first play out of the gate, the alley-oop to James Scott, like that was vintage. I mean, I remember Rick Pitino running a similar play for my entire childhood where it would
they would run
something.
it, but the variant would be Pitino ran that for usually like, you think of Peyton Siva in the national championship game.
Kyle Kirk, Terrence Williams doing lobs to those. Sorry, Luke Hancock, not that. You're my guy, but I mean, not.
He does James Young in the tournament game.
He's acknowledged a couple times he and Kyle Kirk, different realms and everything. But I think it just showcases the plan and what basically it looked a little sketchy at times. However, like going into this, it's like, oh, does Josh Hurd know what he's doing? However, they were able to build this up, and he's won the offseason from doing the press conference, the coaches shows, the car wash with all the media. And that's why I think the people were standing. And quite frankly, just seeing a product out there where, I mean, it sounds crazy, but just trying and diving. Like I remember battling people. I'm like, I'm watching the game on there, and I remember I think it was against DePaul, and there were no Louisville players past. They turned it over, and there were no Louisville players past midcourt trying to get back on defense. And I'm like, that's problematic. This team, if they turned it over, and look, it wasn't at times the best shooting performances at time, but the defense pressuring the ball. Chucky Hepburn, I think, is going to be a star in the ACC. It was very rewarding if you're a Louisville fan with everything that you've gone through, and even if you were on the fence about Pat Kelsey. I don't know if the guy's going to win national championships or go to Final Fours. That's a big picture discussion we can have way down the road. However, in the now, it was very rewarding with everything that the fan base has been through, and they've been through a lot, to see a product and a roster out there that looked like they gave a damn. And their give a bleep meter definitely showed.
Yeah, and I really, in the last two games, the Spalding game and then Morehead State, I've been more impressed with the defense than I am the offense. I mean, that's not just because, they shot 56 threes in the first exhibition. It's Young Harris. They shot, the lights out in that one. But we kind of know what the offense is going to look like at this point. There were questions like, okay, how's this team going to look defensively? What type of style they're going to play? And it's been really encouraging to see the ball pressure, hands in the passing lanes. Louisville had 30 deflections in the game on Monday night. In the Spalding game, they had 20 deflections in just the first half. They got 12 steals. They forced 21 turnovers. 29-2 in points off turnovers. And we've talked about at length here on the podcast of Chucky Hepburn's role in all that, but I really thought Kason Pryor is a dude that I think has been overlooked on the defensive end a little bit. I mean, he was a double-double machine at South Florida. We all know that. We know he can score the ball, but he is so active, rebounding, getting deflections, initiating the offense even on the break after that. I mean, you think about, the 11-1 run Louisville had that kind of broke the game open midway through the first half. It's capped off with him having a steal and an assist on the fast break. Then he, after another possession where Louisville gets 2 blocks, he again initiates a fast break and finds Chucky Hepburn for a 3. I mean,
and it was a great extra pass too that you were kind of on the fence about. Does he need to do that extra pass there? And then you see it and you're like, oh, that was the right play there. And just something that felt like it was so forced. This just feels so natural in the grand scheme of things of what they were able to do compared to last year. And look, I know it's an ongoing topic here. When do you turn the page from, last year? And it's like, I think you're seeing it with just how the fan base is engaged, and the lower bowl by all counts was, all but filled. And look, I know people got set up in arms about the Matt Jones. It was a good crowd. And with everything that's transpired, it was a really good crowd. And the crazy thing is, like, our buddy Jeff Lightsey, he put out that tweet and Matt Jones kind of took it and ran with it. And it's like, that's not what Pat Kelsey was saying at all. Like, he was urging, like, that's been his gimmick since he's gotten here, urging fans to get back to the young. But he is on the caveat of saying how grateful he's been for everyone that's shown up. So it wasn't a slight at all. I feel like that definitely got blown out of proportion, because it was, with everything that's transpired, a blown out of proportion tweet. But then also, I mean, my small measuring stick is how many people here ask us for tickets. I've had to turn away so many people for this Louisville Tennessee game on. And again, I know a ranked opponent for some of those things, but that hasn't been the case in the last 2 years for Louisville basketball. Like, it's just like, yeah, sure, we can get you tickets. That's not an issue. But maybe outside the Kentucky game. But this early in the season, I can't recall something, especially here at the station, where we've had some folks that have asked us and we've been like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but sorry, we don't have those.
I mean, you tell me Matt Jones, the Louisville-Kentucky rivalry aspect blew something out of proportion? That never happens.
Yeah. That's, yeah. And it's just, and the crazy thing is just so many people take what he says, at face value, and it's just like it gets blown out. And I'm honestly over the whole notion of just like the attendance wars. People's habits change in COVID. We've talked about this ad nauseum, but it's just, it was a good crowd. Those that were there, Eric Crawford said it perfectly. I don't know if you saw his tweet, but he said a long time ago, they tried, he equated it to some, I think Sesame Street was beating some famous show in the 70s or 80s. And the way he equated it says, I'm just going to focus on our core audience and make the best show we can possibly make. And it was just a very unique perspective that I thought he handled perfectly. I want to get the tweet right as I'm digging for it, but I'll have to pull that up here in a bit. But it was a
look. I mean, I'll say this while you pull it up. I mean, you saw the players respond to the crowd. You saw the crowd respond to the players, and you saw it, especially on the defensive end. Louisville had that intensity early, but it carried out through the game there. And they did such a good job again, just pushing the opposing
Right.
offense out. Really making their point of attack, making it really hard to initiate the offense for Morehead. And these are questions like, can they do that against a team like Tennessee, against the better teams they'll play? That's a great question. But the fact that they're pressuring the ball, picking up in full court at points, they're not doing full on Rick Pitino pressure by any means, but just trying to get cut off the head of the snake. I feel like
Right.
Louisville's done a really, really good job of that throughout the exhibitions and the Morehead game, and I'm really fascinated to see if they can do that against Tennessee too.
Yeah, yeah. Here was the Eric Crawford tweet, and I think it's long, so bear with me. I keep hearing about crowds at the games, and I feel like crowds are just not like they used to be anywhere. I thought it was a good crowd at Louisville last night. The number felt a little low, but the count is what it was. Kentucky had a good crowd, but also had about 700 something empty seats for Mark Pope's first game. Doesn't really matter. Was still a bigger crowd than anyone else in college basketball likely drew. And with its capacity, nearly 4,000 less than what the building used to have, talking about Rupp Arena. It's like ratings or page views or followers in my business. Someone always has more. Okay, occasionally not. There's a little humble brag by EC. I appreciate that. Also, you have to accept it at that and do your best. McDonald's sells more hamburgers than anybody else in the US. Would you say they have the best burgers? Would that be your choice if you were eating a burger every day? I've come around to the Fred Rogers way of thinking. When they asked if it bothered him that Sesame Street was getting so many more viewers and so much more attention than his show. And he said, just think of the viewers. I just try to think of the viewers we do have and what we're doing for them. I don't like knocking fan bases for attendance. I've probably changed in that regard. People spend a lot of money and time to attend these games. Some decide where they want to spend it or elsewhere. Doesn't really make any group any less worthy. They just are what they are. And I thought that was, kind of a unique way to look at everything and just like guys, like focus on the core that's there and then impress them, and you'll probably sway back some of those that are on the fence, not really sold on this new regime, and then build from there.
I'll add this on it. I think a good pondering question that I'm intrigued by is just the nature of the Yum Center itself. Like, it's a spectacular building. Don't get me wrong; it is a phenomenal facility for basketball. But if you're in that upper deck, and this is less of a Morehead State question, but more so like Tennessee, Ole Miss, the Duke Carolina, the big games down the line Louisville has, have people kind of had, I don't know if realization is the right word, or come to the conclusion that it's better, and we don't know from the last few years because of how bad the team's been,
Right.
but because of how bad the seating is up there,
Well, I mean,
is it because I think, like, first of all, for Tennessee Saturday, I think it's going to be completely bananas. Like there very well could be 20,000 plus people there. But when it comes down to it, would the average person rather pay 60, 70, $80 to sit in the nosebleeds and have a view like you're on the moon? Or would you rather sit on the couch where you can get a, incredible 4K viewing on a TV?
well, and I think, look, you've done your road trip all around this country with the Allen Field House, and you know how that's laid out. And I mean, even here locally, like Knights Hall, Scotty D was on earlier, and Knights Hall kind of has a more intimate feel for it. And when you look at Kentucky taking out some of the seats, and there's only a few cathedrals in the sport that kind of have that high school gym feel to it and make it in. Well, Louisville, as we talked about, is kind of deemed as the pro team for that. So when they were building this, they thought it was going to be there, and they never thought the juggernaut would get a hiccup along the way. It's a Double D and Blank got a lot of traction out of this on their show, and it's just, should you dip ticket costs? You want to make it an environment, things like that. And I really don't know the answer to that, because I understand it's like the season ticket core that you do have that opens up Pandora's box of like, hey, why am I paying you this much when you're lowering at this? And I've been a value customer for all. So I don't know the answers to it. Those that have figured it out will be, billionaires if they ever figure out that website that can get through all the secondhand sites on that. But yeah, I mean, the atmosphere, I think you should just focus on the atmosphere that you have. Like Louisville women's game, I know I do the show with Nick Kern. They drape off the top, and I think we just have to recalibrate our minds. It's just, since COVID, since everything that transpired with Kenny Payne, everything with Rick Pitino, it's not going to be the same thing that it once was. And you have to kind of build off that momentum and hope that it can catapult into that.
Look, and I'll say this. I mean, it is just I don't know, and I don't want to turn it into just crap on the answer because it's an incredible facility. It is, but just I've been in the upper deck at Rupp Arena. I've been in the balcony of Assembly Hall. Some pretty crappy seats, to be completely
Right.
honest.
And
And
it's great if
I've
you're in
done
college, and
yeah,
if you're in
and
college and
I've
just want to get in, but it's tough if like you're
yeah.
older families, getting your toddlers up there. I get it.
And like I've done, upper deck at the United Center in Chicago, at Gainbridge and Indy, the State Farm Center down here where I am in Atlanta. I don't think I've sat in an upper deck that's worse than the Center as far as just how high it is. It just is what it is. Like it's hard for me to go to a game and say I'm gonna sit up there.
Yeah,
It
no.
just and I know I'm probably not alone in that, but and this is not really where I expected this
Yeah,
conversation
I
to
know.
go, to
It's
be completely
well,
honest.
and I
But
know. Look,
yeah,
and that's the thing. Like recalibrating us too. Like when we talk about the fans changing the habit for the last 2 years, I've said I literally wanted to open the Sunday morning hangover for Ethan Moore this week, and just play Hallelujah for about 10 straight minutes, just because Ethan and Taylor had to go through those post game shows as long as they had for all these years of just like how do you analyze the game. So I think us as hosts have to kind of like you told the standard is the standard. Okay, well now you're actually seeing something that is substantial and it's completely different than what it was a few years ago. So we have to retrain our minds in terms of okay, you can react to a game and not just the big picture, and that's it's been challenging. I got to be honest.
which to be say like that's what I do this podcast
Exactly,
for, to try to
exactly.
react to the games and preview the games. That's why it's been such a struggle for me the last couple of years of yes, I understand there's a time and the place for the big picture, but every single game is just big picture, the program's in shambles, all that. It's like I just want to talk about how, they ran the two alley oops for James Scott, or
Yeah.
like how active Cason Pryor was, or the possession they had late in the first half where it was so unselfish. They made the extra pass so many times that they get a second chance, and then Pryor, penetrates again, and they ended up getting to the free throw line. Like that's a beautiful offensive possession. I want to talk about the defense. I want to talk about, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, the Tennessee game and all the intricacies of that. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I'm putting it on the record. Like Louisville's beating Tennessee on Saturday, Phil.
Oh, okay.
They're
So
they're
what's
going
the
to win that
data?
game.
What's the data behind this? As my little basketball Benny has given me his stone cold lock of the week, it sounds like.
Yeah, if you get it at I technically am not allowed to bet with my
Allegedly.
job these days.
Oh God. I mean,
Yeah,
you know a guy. Allegedly. Allegedly.
I'm just gonna leave that that as
Allegedly.
is. But if you can get Louisville at plus money on Saturday, I would be that. I think that's a good bet.
I'm
A
facial
good money line.
recognitioning that
Look,
right now. And for the fine folks and partners here at ESPN Louisville, for FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, Caesars, I will heed your advice.
yeah, but I'll say this. First of all, like I've seen Tennessee in person already. I went up. I'm the maniac that drove up to Knoxville when they played Indiana in the charity exhibition.
God, you have an
Um,
illness, but I love it.
it was a good game actually, but the more data we start to get since that, I think like I thought about this at the time that okay, Indiana in that game, which is another team Louisville's going to play in a couple weeks, and I think as of right now, I think Louisville's going to beat Indiana.
Okay.
Um, at the time, the thought process was I was genuinely surprised about how quality of a shot Indiana was able to get against a Tennessee Rick Barnes defense. Like IU didn't really run anything too complex in that game. Basically, all their offense was, getting out in transition, or they ran a lot of floppy action. Think that they ran a lot of floppy action in terms of trying to get guys open on the perimeter. They were able to have some post ups, things like that. But they really weren't doing anything all that complicated. Yet Indiana was able to get good looks. They were able to get good shots a lot of the time throughout that game. They were up over 1.3 points per possession in the second half in that. But then you watch Indiana against SIU Edwardsville in their season opener, and they were a complete mess offensively.
Oh, trust me.
Tennessee plays
I had the first half under, and it was under
that was a good
71.
bet. That was probably a good bet.
No, no, no. It went. They got 72.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. Yep, that's
That's
sports
brutal.
gambling. So yeah,
That's
that's
brutal.
yeah, yeah, yep.
But anyways, and then you watch Tennessee and Gardner Webb, where Tennessee gets out rebounded by Gardner Webb.
Yeah.
And Gardner Webb scores 64 points in that game. This is not a typical Rick Barnes Tennessee defense at this point. And to quote Rick Pitino, Dalton Connect's not walking through that door. Chaz Lanier is a very gifted scorer, a very good player. He is not Dalton Connect. Zakai Ziegler is a really, really great seasoned veteran point guard, and he's going to cause a lot of problems for Louisville, especially on the defensive end of the floor. But they don't have that same team defense right now that we're used to seeing from Rick Barnes teams. Plus, they have some injury concerns right now. JP Estrella didn't play in the Gardner Webb game. He's really a stretch four for them. Felix Akpara, the dude, the Ohio State transfer that I really think is going to give, or really thought that would give Louisville more issues than anyone else other than probably Ziegler. Because he's a 7-foot guy, legit shot blocker, really athletic, a guy that can step out and guard on the perimeter some as well and be a really effective post scorer. He has a hit pointer right now. I don't know if he's going to play in that game. So you're getting Tennessee right now undermanned, not gelling defensively, and Indiana, because Indiana doesn't defend worth a shit either. They gave him 29 threes in that game. Probably 25 of the 29 Tennessee took were good looks, and they bricked 21 of them. Like, this isn't a great shooting team on top of it as well, to where I look at all these things and I say, Indiana's getting good looks against Tennessee, and Gardner Webb's beating Tennessee on the rebounding edge. Louisville, who has, an identity on the offensive end right now, who, the rebounding thing's a question mark for them, but maybe that's not as big of a weakness as we thought it might be going into this game, especially if Tennessee's front line is banged up. I think this could work out really well for Louisville, to where they're able to go and make a statement, especially in an insane hostile environment, no matter how many people are there in the Yum Center. That's just going to be ready to explode after what's happened the last few years of this program.
Well, you brought something up about the rebounding, and that's kind of been a narrative that I would say has been created here locally, is that some of the issues, and maybe it's just kind of looking at the roster, just seeing how thin, not necessarily the height is an issue, but it's just you got James Scott, who's, not the most muscular banger in the post. Casey Pryor obviously can get some rebounds.
And James Scott had to stay out of foul trouble too.
Exactly. So is that a concern for you throughout the season, like next man up? But then you see somebody like Abubakar Traore who can go up there and soar with, some of the giants out there. But I wasn't sure your initial takeaways from just a rebounding standpoint of how you felt about that.
I thought against Morehead, Louisville was great early. Like, they were really, really good on the glass early. I think they were up like 13-4, 14-5, something like that. But as the game went along, again, when James Scott had some foul trouble issue, Casey Pryor had 15, 16 rebounds in the game. He was phenomenal on the glass, but the team rebounding wasn't as good as what I was hoping for, and kind of because they only won the rebounding edge by 4, I think, throughout the game. For that, to where, yes, that is absolutely a question. That's something that off the bat I thought Tennessee will give them issues with, especially if Agpara is able to play. But Tennessee, they weren't rebounding the ball well against Indiana in the exhibition. They weren't rebounding the ball well against Gardner Webb in game 1. And yes, these are all small sample sizes. You can get burned when you overreact to small sample sizes, but I think that's all we got right now. And yes, but all these teams have a lot of time to grow and improve and get better at that. But the fact is, this game's on Saturday. It's coming up soon. What we've seen so far is pretty much where they are at the moment in terms of what they're going to be, to where I don't think Louisville's that good of a rebounding team right now. I don't think Tennessee is that good of a rebounding team right now, to where I don't think it's going to hurt Louisville as much as I would have thought a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think big picture, when you're just breaking down just like the entire ACC and the league as a whole.
Which, by the way, North Carolina got out rebounded by Elon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was something that popped out to be as well, in terms of when you're just kind of looking at the overall league and scope of where Louisville could possibly be. But man, like if they can embody just some of the energy that Pat Kelsey has, and I think that they have. So we got to look, this is like PTI behind us, or around the horn. We just got all the bouncers behind us. That's going to be, Goodman's going to be thrilled about this. Take that. He's going to love this. You dropped an S-bomb on me. I guess Goodman's allowing that now that Fanta and you are just making it Field of 68 after dark. But anyways, it's just been fascinating just to kind of see the excitement around that. But one of the things that the guard play, not concerned about. I think there's scores there. I think there's guys on this team that can go out and get you points. The one question mark I've had, and Leaves has kind of shot this down a couple of times, is like, if you got guys that are going to bang it down there, play bigger than what they actually are, it's not going to be a concern. But, when you get into the Dukes of the world, you alluded to Carolina, just one of the brands, but struggled rebounding out there. So
right, but like Carolina is trotting out Jalen Washington and Jalen Withers as a front line right now.
I saw Jalen Withers in the charity game against Memphis, and I go, huh. I was like, still hanging around. It's like the Van Wilder of college basketball, just still him and Matt Cross just lingering around still. But and I don't know about you, man. So I used to do this exercise, and I know I don't have to worry about this with you, but I did an exercise before every year where I would get the Courier Journal. Shout out to Eric Crawford, Pat Forty, and Rick Bozich for this. But I would memorize the local rosters based off that. And it has been so challenging locally, but like on a conference level, it has been so challenging to kind of get the memory of the entire rosters through the transfer portal. I sound like I'm Billy Reed, RIP, but it's been so difficult to keep up with everyone from the transfer portal. I'm like, he plays there? So that's a little food for thought inside the brain of your boy.
Yeah, the Matt Cross playing at SMU thing genuinely shocked me during ACC media days. That one I didn't know.
I was like, Matt Cross?
Huh. Yeah, but like against Duke, which to be fair, a lot of teams are really going to struggle against Duke on the glass, on the boards, on the length. Yeah, Kentucky is, I think, honestly, just kind of a little bit of a taller, bigger version of Louisville. I mean, they're both very similar teams at this stage. But I think Kentucky does have a little bit more size in the front court, so we'll see how that game plays out, which I think is going to be a spectacular basketball game just to watch. Indiana has, Umar Ballo, Malik Renew. They're, two really big, talented dudes, but Mike Woodson's teams can't rebound despite being incredibly tall every year, and it just does not make sense. I'll spare that whole diatribe for another, podcast or something like that, because this isn't an Indiana podcast. But I mean, they're going to struggle with it depending on the matchups, and I think Tennessee will be a good barometer. It's going to be such a good litmus test for Louisville on so many levels, to where I think Tennessee's probably overrated as the 12th best team in the country right now. But it's still, it's still Rick Barnes, it's still Zakai Ziegler. You have
him and Chucky Hepburn. That's going to be such a fun. That's going to be so fun. I've been a big fan of Chucky Hepburn for just a college basketball fan, and it's like, man, he's kind of lingering around there. Whenever he was getting in the mixer, Louisville was like, that would be an absolute dynamite pickup for Pat Kelsey. So I'm thrilled for that matchup coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Two of probably the best 3-4 on-ball defenders in the sport going at against each other. And I'm very interested to see what Pat Kelsey does if they're actually going to be matched up on each other all game. Like, I know Zakai Ziegler is going to be guarding Chucky Hepburn. Like, that's a given. But does Chucky guard Zakai Ziegler? Does he guard Chaz Lanier? I think is going to be a really, really great question, because you could take a Javon Hadley or a Terrence Edwards and try to disrupt Ziegler a little bit with his length, with their length, instead of and take your best on-ball defender and say, okay, we want him on your best scorer. And I think if I was Pat Kelsey, I think that might be what I would do. But you can't go wrong with trying to, again, cut the head of the snake off and say, we want Chucky Hepburn, really making it tough for Ziegler to even bring the ball up there. Then the lineup combinations have a lot to do that as well. How do you change it if you play Chucky Hepburn and Corin Johnson together, which he did for long stretches against Morehead State? What happens when Rain Smith is in there? What happens when you have so many different lineups that you can have? What's hilarious is there's people going out behind us and going through from ESPN Louisville, and I'm waving hi to everyone. What's funny is you're going to be cropped when we actually put this out there, Phil. So little of this is actually going to be visible.
That's perfect.
Which is just so perfect on so many levels. So yeah, if I get distracted at any point, that would be why. Because the people I'm friends with there. But how Pat Kelsey chooses to defend Tennessee and what he decides to do with the matchups, to me, is going to be really fascinating. I would not, again, if it was me, I would put Chucky Hepburn on Chaz Lanier. That's what you think of, like, back in the day, it's a little bit of a different setup, but John Calipari, the year Kentucky won the national title, he would put Michael Kidd-Gilchrist on the opposing team's best scorer. And Chucky Hepburn doesn't have the versatility that Michael Kidd-Gilchrist has. Kidd-Gilchrist was like 6'7". But if they were playing a team that had a really, like, I remember the Indiana games. They would put Michael Kidd-Gilchrist on Jordan Hulse, 6 foot white guy from Wilmington, Indiana, and say,
Play with them probably in a JCC men's league now. Yeah, that's
yeah, but they would go like, he's not going to let you get shots off in this
right.
game. You're going to make you work for everything. And Chucky Hepburn, even though he's not as tall, you can't do that like when you play Duke and Cooper Flag, for instance, in a game against Tennessee against Chaz Lanier, dude that's like 6'3", 6'4". I think you could absolutely put Chucky Hepburn on there and say, take the best scorer out of the game. Rick Barnes' teams outside of the Dalton Connect year aren't very good offensively. We're going to make them try to run offense to beat us. And I don't know if Tennessee can do that.
Well, and yeah, and I think with this Louisville roster, it's look, you can talk about just the scope of just the entirety of the season. First, making the tournament, Pat Kelsey's just demeanor as a head coach, and look, he's still learning on the job. I'm curious to see when this honeymoon and a play doesn't go right and you'll win a game. But I think he's going to have such a massive honeymoon phase and grace period just because of the effort and defense that you've seen thus far, and then the shooting that you've been able to see that you've been pretty impressed with. Big picture. Hey, there's the double D right there saying hi as well too. But look, I think overall should be a fun game at the KFC Yum Center. So many people are excited about it. Again, did you see who's on the call? I tweeted this out.
No, who is on the call?
Oh my goodness. Actually not on the call. I think it's Crispin on the play-by-play, but Eric freaking Devendorf is the color
really.
I had I meant to text Luke Hancock because I was just like, holy hell, that Eric Devendorf's your colleague now? Eric freaking Devendorf is on and it's on the ACC network, which I know just breaks my heart, but you're in the middle of college football season, so it's to be expected. But it should be a great atmosphere out there. So many people are hitting us up for that too to try to get tickets, so it should be really fun.
Oh yeah, it's going to be absolutely crazy there on Saturday to see what happens with Louisville and Tennessee, and really the first chance for Pat Kelsey's team to make a really big statement nationally against. It's the litmus test. That's what I've been saying for months now. Is where are they at, and how much farther do they need to go? That's what we're going to find out when they play Tennessee on Saturday.
Yeah, no, it should be fun. And you said for the gambling purposes out there, if you can find that in plus money, take it.
Which right now, Ken Pom has Louisville by 1. Torvik has, or not Louisville by 1. Ken Pom has Tennessee by 1. Torvik has Louisville by 2. So I don't think you're going to get as much value as you would have a week ago when in the preseason Ken Pom, Tennessee's by 4, and basically Vegas only just blindly throws the Ken Pom spreads on there these days. So if you get, I think it's going to open up probably somewhere Tennessee -1, 1.5, 2, somewhere in that range. If that's what it is, I would absolutely bet Louisville money line.
Okay,
in that spot.
I'm getting on the apps now, and I shall do it. But I know this is your the problem is with college basketball.
They don't release it till the day before.
Yeah. So it's like that's unfortunate. So I was like, I'm all mixed up. I thought today was Friday, so I'm all mixed up on my dates. But it should be a fun one at the KFC Yum Center. Full coverage right here on ESPN Louisville. And I know Jack Grossman should be plugging the podcast. He'll be reacting to that game next week, I'm sure, as well.
Absolutely. Plan tentatively is for Sunday, but you know how it goes. We'll early next week is what we're aiming for, pod-wise. Hopefully, me, Coach Liebman, or maybe Phil Baker or someone else as well. But Phil, always appreciate the time. Again, at Phil_Baker.
Don't get it twisted, Elon Musk.
Sunday morning hangover, 10 to noon every Sunday morning over on ESPN 680. Phil, always appreciate the time, man.
You as well, man. Have fun at the Champions Classic next week, my friend.
Oh, I cannot wait. I'm going to be in person at the Champions Classic. Thank you guys for helping me out with that. I'm excited, beyond excited for that one. Kentucky, Duke, Michigan State, Kansas. That Kentucky Duke game, I think, is going to be really, really good and a lot of fun to watch.
We had CL Brown yesterday on the V Show, and I know he was on with Double D as well. So go by, say hi with him. He'll probably be in his fancy bow tie and everything. But connect with CL Brown. Maybe he can come on the pod.
Absolutely. I still have his number back from the producing days too. But
well, I'm saying CL's a great one. But yeah, he's going to be courtside, glistening down at the in ATL. Maybe you can take him out for a bite too. A little Magic City after. I don't know.
Hey, you never know. But anyways, thanks, Phil. This has been Floyd Street's Finest, Field of 68. Follow us, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe, do all those things I always forget to say. But until next time, he's Phil Baker. I'm Jack.